I'm Greg, 32, a construction manager from Seattle. Life was going fine until I came home early from a business trip and found strange men working in my bedroom. My sister Sarah appeared flustered, saying, "We're doing some renovations before we move in." Something felt off, but I trusted her. Next morning I was jolted awake by loud knocking. Sarah's scream pierced the air. "Why is the police knocking on our door?" Before I tell you how my sister's renovation nearly sent me to prison, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more unbelievable true stories like mine. I've always been the responsible one. After graduating with my civil engineering degree from Washington State, I worked my way up to becoming a construction manager at Westlake Builders, one of Seattle's premier development firms. My life had a comfortable rhythm, overseeing projects, meeting deadlines, and enjoying weekend hikes in the Cascades. That steady rhythm was disrupted 8 months ago when I received the call that changed everything. My parents, returning from their anniversary dinner, never made it home. A drunk driver crossed the median on Highway 99, hitting them head-on. They died instantly. The grief hit like concrete blocks, but I had to stay strong. My younger sister Sarah needed me more than ever. Our family home in Maple Leaf, a quiet North Seattle neighborhood, suddenly felt emptier. The two-story Craftsman where we'd grown up now belonged to Sarah and me, though I was the one who moved back in. The house held everything: Mom's garden in the backyard, where she grew heirloom tomatoes; Dad's workshop in the garage, where he taught me to build my first birdhouse; the height marks on the kitchen doorframe tracking our growth. Every corner held memories I couldn't bear to lose. Sarah, 28 and freshly divorced from her husband of 3 years, was struggling. Tyler, her ex, had left her for his personal trainer, leaving Sarah with debt and wounded pride. She'd been living in an overpriced Capitol Hill apartment, barely making ends meet with her graphic design freelance work. When I suggested she move back home temporarily to save money and heal, she hesitated but eventually agreed. "Just until I get back on my feet, Greg," she promised, moving into her old bedroom, while I took the master bedroom our parents had occupied. My job required frequent travel, usually 2 or 3 days a week, inspecting sites across Washington, Oregon, and occasionally California. I didn't mind the travel. Hotels were quiet places to think, and the road gave me space to process my grief. Sarah seemed to appreciate having the house to herself sometimes, too. Our neighbors were decent folks. The Johnsons next door had been there forever, watching Sarah and me grow up. On the other side, the Patels had moved in 3 years ago with their 2 young kids. Across the street, several houses had changed hands recently, as the neighborhood gentrified, bringing in younger tech workers with their cold brew coffee and electric cars. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs with Sarah. Phone calls that stopped when I entered the room. Friends I'd never met before dropping by and speaking in hushed tones. Cash appearing in her wallet despite her complaints about not finding work. Her mood swings: bubbly one day, withdrawn the next. I attributed it all to her divorce recovery and grief over our parents. We all cope differently, right? "How's the job hunt going?" I'd ask. "Getting some bites," she'd say vaguely. "Had a promising interview last week." I never pressed. Maybe that was my first mistake. That Tuesday in April, I was in Portland, scheduled to spend 3 days reviewing a problematic apartment complex renovation. Around noon, I received a call that the client had pulled funding, and the project was suspended indefinitely. "No point in you staying down there, Greg," my boss said. "Head back to Seattle and we'll reassign you next week." I considered calling Sarah, but then thought better of it. Why not surprise her? Maybe we could grab dinner at that Thai place she liked. I hadn't been the most present brother lately, too consumed with work and grief. This could be a chance to reconnect. The drive back to Seattle took just under 3 hours. Traffic was light, and spring sunshine warmed the Cascades, painting the landscape in vibrant greens. I felt lighter somehow, like things might finally be looking up. Little did I know I was driving straight into a nightmare that would test my faith in family, force me to question everything I thought I knew about my sister, and eventually put me on the wrong side of a police interrogation table. I pulled into our driveway around 4:30 in the afternoon. Cherry blossoms from our neighbor's tree had scattered across our lawn, creating a pink carpet that reminded me of how much Mom had loved spring. The day was unusually warm for April in Seattle, hitting the mid-70s, and most neighbors had their windows open to catch the breeze. What caught my attention immediately was the white, unmarked van parked in our driveway blocking my usual spot. The van looked weathered dents on the passenger door mud, splattered across the wheel wells, and a ladder rack on top without any actual ladders. No company name or logo adorned its sides. I parked on the street figuring Sarah must have hired handymen for some minor repairs. As I approached the house, I heard muffled thumping sounds coming from upstairs, like furniture being moved or walls being hammered. The front door was unlocked, unusual for our neighborhood despite its relative safety. I stepped inside, calling out, "Sarah, I'm home early." No response came, but the noises upstairs continued. I set down my overnight bag in the hallway and headed up the stairs, noticing fine white dust on the steps. The sounds were coming from my bedroom at the end of the hall. The door stood partially open. I pushed it wider and froze. 3 men in work clothes were inside, but this was no ordinary renovation scene. My bedroom had been transformed into what looked like a construction disaster zone. 2 sections of drywall had been cut away, exposing the wooden studs inside. My hardwood flooring had been partially pried up near the closet, revealing the subflooring beneath. Power tools lay scattered across plastic sheeting that protected what remained of my floor. The men themselves were as puzzling as their work. One was tall and lanky with a sleeve of tattoos visible beneath his rolled-up shirt. Another was heavyset with a thick beard and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. The third, younger than the others, had nervous energy about him, constantly shifting his weight from one foot to another. What struck me most was their reaction to my appearance. Rather than the casual acknowledgement you'd expect from legitimate contractors, they exchanged quick, alarmed glances. The youngest one immediately set down the drill he was holding and stepped away from the wall. "Who are you?" the bearded man asked, his tone more accusatory than curious. "I'm Greg. I live here. This is my bedroom," I replied, confusion giving way to suspicion. "Who are you guys?" None of them answered directly. The tattooed man mumbled something about being with the renovation crew, but offered no company name or further explanation. None made eye contact for more than a split second. What they were doing didn't make sense either. Normal renovations follow patterns, removing all drywall in a section, not random squares. The tools scattered about included some that seemed out of place for basic room renovation. Precise measuring instruments, a thermal scanner, and what looked like specialized cutting tools for creating perfectly sized cavities. Before I could question them, further rapid footsteps sounded in the hallway, and Sarah appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath. Her face registered shock before quickly transitioning to a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Greg, you're home early." She glanced nervously at the workers, then back to me. "What a surprise." "What's going on here, Sarah?" I gestured to my demolished room. "Why are these guys tearing apart my bedroom?" Sarah's laugh sounded forced as she hooked her arm through mine, pulling me slightly away from the door. "It was supposed to be a surprise. We're doing some renovations before we move in." "Move in? Who's moving in? I already live here." "Marcus and I," she said, lowering her voice. "My boyfriend. I told you about him. Remember, we're getting pretty serious. And since you're always saying I should save money, we thought he could move in here. I was going to surprise you with a renovated master suite as a thank you for letting us stay." I had never heard of any Marcus. Sarah hadn't mentioned dating anyone, let alone someone serious enough to move into our family home. But before I could say this, she was already continuing her explanation words, tumbling out rapidly. "These guys are friends of Marcus from his construction job. They're doing it at cost for us. Isn't that amazing? They're putting in some custom shelving and fixing that water damage spot you mentioned." I had never mentioned water damage. Looking over Sarah's shoulder, I saw the 3 men hurriedly packing up their tools, moving with the urgency of people eager to escape. The bearded one whispered something to the youngest, who nodded, and began gathering loose materials into a black garbage bag. "We'll finish up another time," the tattooed man said to Sarah, not even acknowledging me. "Text Marcus about the materials we need." Within 5 minutes, they had cleared out, leaving behind the partly demolished room and a tension so thick it felt hard to breathe. The van's engine rumbled to life, and I watched from the window as it pulled away, noting they turned off their headlights, only after reaching the end of our street. Sarah showed me to the guest room, chattering about how I could stay there just for a few weeks until the renovation was complete. She avoided direct answers about when I had supposedly agreed to this arrangement or who exactly Marcus was. Her normal sarcasm and wit were replaced with nervous energy and two loud laughs. Later that evening, as I tried to settle into the unfamiliar guest room, I heard Sarah's hushed voice from the hallway. I moved closer to the door to listen. "They just left everything. No, he came home early. I don't know, some work thing. Of course I handled it. He doesn't suspect anything. Yes, tomorrow should work while he's at the office. No, Marcus. I'm not stupid." After she returned to her room, I waited 30 minutes before creeping back to my partially destroyed bedroom. Using my phone's flashlight, I examined the strange cuts in the walls more carefully. They weren't random or amateurish. They were precise and appeared to be creating hidden recesses within the walls themselves. In one partially open section, my light caught something reflective. Reaching carefully into the cavity, my fingers touched a small plastic package. I pulled it out, a tightly wrapped bundle covered in clear plastic. Inside was white powder. My stomach dropped. This wasn't about renovation. This wasn't about a surprise for me. This was something far more dangerous, and my sister was in the middle of it. I returned to the guest room package, hidden in my pocket mind, racing with impossible questions. The sister I'd grown up with, protected and loved, couldn't be involved in drugs. There had to be an explanation. But as I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, evidence literally in hand, the truth was becoming harder to deny. Sleep would not come easily that night. I sat on the edge of the guest bed for hours, the small package of white powder like a hot coal in my pocket. Every explanation my mind conjured collapsed under the weight of evidence. These weren't renovation workers. That wasn't drywall dust on the stairs. My sister wasn't surprising me with custom shelving. Sarah and I had always been close despite our 4-year age gap. When she was 14 and fell in with a party crowd, I was the one who picked her up from unsafe situations, no questions asked. When she experimented with marijuana and alcohol in high school, I covered for her with our parents, while simultaneously giving her lectures about making smarter choices. "You're such a hypocrite, Greg," she'd say, rolling her eyes. "Like you never partied in college." "That's different," I'd insist. I was older and I knew my limits. There was that weekend when she was 17 and disappeared for 2 days with her then boyfriend. Mom and Dad were frantic, but I was the one who found her at a friend's lake house, coming down from ecstasy and terrified to come home. I brought her back, helped her sober up, and told our parents she'd lost her phone while camping. "I promise I'll never do anything that stupid again," she'd sworn, hugging me tightly. Had I enabled her, created a pattern where Sarah knew I'd always clean up her messes? Our parents had made me promise on Sarah's 18th birthday to always look out for her. "She listens to you," Greg Dad had said, clapping me on the shoulder. "When we're gone someday, hopefully not for many decades, you'll need to be there for each other." Little did any of us know someday would come so soon. At 1 in the morning, unable to sleep, I searched online for home renovations, drugs, and fell into a rabbit hole of articles about homes being used as stash houses. I learned about trap houses where drugs are stored, about wall cavities used to hide contraband, about the telltale signs of distribution operations. Each article made my heart sink further, as details matched what I'd seen in my bedroom. When I heard the soft creak of Sarah's door opening at 2:15, I initially froze. Then curiosity overpowered caution. I slipped out of bed and crept to my door, opening it just enough to see Sarah heading downstairs in her robe. She wasn't headed to the kitchen for a midnight snack. She moved with purpose toward the back door. I followed at a distance, grateful for my knowledge of which floorboards creaked. Through the kitchen window, I watched as Sarah stepped into our backyard. The motion-activated security light illuminated her meeting with a man I'd never seen before, tall with a sleeve of tattoos visible even in the dim light. Not one of the workers from earlier, but similar in appearance and demeanor. Their conversation was partially audible through the slightly open kitchen window. "Had to abort today," Sarah was saying. "My brother showed up." "Marcus isn't happy," the man replied. "The merchandise needs to move by Friday. Customers are waiting." "I'll handle Greg," Sarah assured him. He's clueless. Always has been. The man handed Sarah a thick envelope that she quickly tucked into her robe pocket. 2,000 now, 3 more when the full shipment goes out, he said. Tell Marcus not to worry, Sarah responded. This is my family home. No one suspects anything. I retreated to the guest room before Sarah returned inside my mind, reeling. The sister I thought I knew was unrecognizable to me now. How long had this been going on? Was this why she'd been so eager to move back home? Not because she needed family support, but because she needed a base of operations. I sat in the dark, debating my options. I could confront her immediately, but what if these people were dangerous? What if confronting her put us both at risk? I could call the police, but the thought of turning in my own sister made me physically ill. She could go to prison. Our family home could be seized. But doing nothing wasn't an option either. Whatever was happening in my bedroom walls, whatever Sarah was involved in, it was serious and potentially dangerous. Drug dealers, real ones, not the harmless stereotype from movies, were coming to our family home, using her. I decided to confront Sarah in the morning. I'd approach calmly, give her a chance to explain, offer to help her get out of whatever mess she was in. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe this Marcus was manipulating her, taking advantage of her vulnerability after the divorce and our parents' death. I set my alarm for 7, hoping to catch her before she left the house. I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd stay calm but firm. I'd remind her of our parents, of our family values, of all the opportunities still ahead of her if she made better choices now. Around 4 in the morning, exhaustion finally overpowered anxiety, and I drifted into uneasy sleep, filled with dreams of walls closing in, and my sister's face transforming into someone unrecognizable. The sound that jolted me awake wasn't my alarm. It was a heavy, authoritative pounding on our front door, followed immediately by my sister's panicked scream from downstairs. The digital clock on the nightstand read 6:32 when the pounding began. 3 sharp, official-sounding knocks that seemed to vibrate through the house's foundation. Then came Sarah's voice, higher and more frantic than I'd ever heard it. Why is the police knocking on our door? I bolted upright, adrenaline instantly clearing the fog of my brief sleep. I was still wearing yesterday's clothes, having never properly prepared for bed. The package I'd found was still in my pocket, evidence I was now effectively harboring. My feet hit the floor as I heard a deep voice from outside Seattle Police Department open the door. I rushed downstairs to find Sarah standing frozen in the living room, her face drained of color. She was fully dressed despite the early hour, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt as if she'd been preparing to go out. When she saw me, something flickered across her face, fear, calculation, then resolution. "Greg, what did you do?" she whispered, loud enough for me to hear, but not loud enough to carry outside. Before I could respond, the knocking came again, more insistent. I moved toward the door, but Sarah grabbed my arm. "Don't open it," she hissed. "They're not going away, Sarah," I said, pulling free from her grip. "We need to talk to them." I opened the door to find 2 uniformed officers flanking a plainclothes detective on our porch. The detective was a solidly built man in his 40s, with close-cropped salt and pepper hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. "Gregory Lawrence?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," I confirmed. He held up a badge and identification card. "Detective Miguel Martinez, Seattle PD Narcotics Division. These are Officers Thompson and Reeves. We have a warrant to search these premises." He handed me a document that I took with trembling hands. My construction management experience had taught me to review documents carefully before proceeding with any project, but the legal terminology swam before my eyes. I caught phrases like probable cause and suspected narcotics trafficking and all rooms and containers within the dwelling. "There must be some mistake," I said, aware of how cliché it sounded even as the words left my mouth. "No mistake, sir," Detective Martinez replied, his tone professional but leaving no room for argument. "Please step aside." The officers entered our home, and Officer Thompson asked us to sit on the living room couch while Detective Martinez read us the warrant in full. Sarah sat rigidly beside me, her earlier panic now replaced with an eerie calm. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice steady but artificially bright. "We don't have drugs here. This is our family home." Detective Martinez gave her a long look before responding. We've been conducting surveillance on this residence for the past 3 weeks, ma'am. We have reason to believe this property is being used to store and distribute controlled substances. 3 weeks, I echoed, my mind racing. That timeline coincided with when Sarah had started acting strangely, the secretive phone calls, the unexpected visitors. The detective turned to me. Mr. Lawrence, our information suggests you've been traveling frequently. Is that correct? Yes, for work. I'm a construction manager. Convenient expertise for someone modifying a house for hidden compartments, he noted dryly. Officer Reeves had already headed upstairs while Officer Thompson began methodically searching the ground floor. The sound of drawers opening, furniture being moved, and closet doors sliding filled the otherwise silent house. This is all a big misunderstanding, Sarah insisted, her voice taking on a desperate edge. We were just doing some renovations. Greg can tell you he saw the workers yesterday. Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. Workers? What company? Sarah looked at me expectantly, but I couldn't back her lie. I don't know what company they were with, I admitted. They didn't say. They're friends of my boyfriend, Sarah jumped in. They were doing us a favor. Your boyfriend's name? Martinez asked. A heartbeat of hesitation. Marcus Wilson. The detective made a note in his small notebook, but something in his expression told me the name wasn't new to him. Officer Reeves Martinez called up the stairs. Check the master bedroom walls. Within minutes, the sound of discovery echoed through the house. Detective, you're going to want to see this, Officer Reeves called down. Martinez pointed at us. Stay here with Officer Thompson. Don't move. 10 minutes later, he returned downstairs, his expression grim. In his gloved hands were multiple plastic packages, similar to the one I'd found at least a dozen, possibly more. We've found approximately 2 kilograms of what appears to be cocaine, hidden in multiple wall cavities in the upstairs master bedroom, he announced formally. Additionally, we've discovered approximately $47,000 in cash, concealed in a modified floorboard compartment. Sarah gasped beside me, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine shock at the amount or practiced theatrics. That's not ours, I said automatically. I had no idea that was there. Is that right? Martinez studied me. Yet you own this house, correct? Property records show it was transferred to you and Sarah Lawrence after your parents' passing 8 months ago. Yes, but... And you work in construction with specific knowledge of how homes are built. Yes, but I didn't. And you were present yesterday when workers were modifying your bedroom walls. I felt the conversation slipping away from me, each fact connecting to create a picture of guilt despite my innocence. I just got home yesterday from a business trip, I explained desperately. I found those men in my room. I had no idea what they were really doing. Sarah suddenly shifted strategies. Greg's lying, she said, her voice quivering. This is his operation. It's his house. He moved me in here as cover. I turned to her in shock. Sarah, what are you doing? I'm telling the truth. Tears began streaming down her face. I was afraid to say anything. He said he'd blame everything on me if we ever got caught. Officer Thompson stepped forward as Detective Martinez nodded to him. Gregory Lawrence, Sarah Lawrence. You're both under arrest for possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute a felony under Washington state law. The cold metal of handcuffs closed around my wrists as Martinez recited our Miranda rights. Through the living room window, I could see neighbors gathering on the sidewalk watching the spectacle unfold. The Johnsons, who had known us since we were children. The Patels with their young kids, wide-eyed at the drama. New neighbors whose names I didn't even know yet already, forming judgments that would follow our family name in local gossip for years to come. As we were led to separate police cruisers, Sarah caught my eye one last time. In that look was a complex mixture of emotions, guilt, fear, and something that looked like a plea. But a plea for what? Understanding, forgiveness. Or was she silently begging me to take the fall for her? The police car door closed behind me with a thud of finality, and I watched my childhood home recede in the rear window, yellow crime scene tape already being strung across our front porch. The interrogation room at the Seattle Police Department's North Precinct was exactly as depressing as crime shows depicted: windowless cinder block walls, painted an institutional beige, a metal table bolted to the floor, uncomfortable. chairs, and a two-way mirror that didn't pretend to be anything else. The clock on the wall read 9:47, but it felt like days had passed since the morning raid. My handcuffs had been removed, but the red marks around my wrists remained a physical reminder of how quickly life can change. I'd been given a cup of water that sat untouched, condensation forming a ring on the metal table. When Detective Martinez entered, he carried a thick folder that he placed deliberately between us. He didn't speak immediately, a classic interrogation technique I recognized from television but was still powerless against. The silence stretched until anxiety compelled me to fill it. "I had nothing to do with those drugs," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "I swear I didn't know." Martinez leaned back, studying me. "That's a common statement in this room, Mr. Lawrence. Rarely true, but common. In my case, it is true. I'm a construction manager, not a drug dealer. Those aren't mutually exclusive occupations." He opened the folder and began laying out photographs on the table. These were taken over the past 3 weeks. The surveillance photos showed my house from various angles. Sarah greeting different men at the door, the white van parked in our driveway on multiple occasions, close-ups of packages being carried inside. "Note the dates," Martinez said, tapping several photos. "March 23rd, March 27th, April 2nd, April 8th. All days your company confirms you were traveling for work." My heart sank. The operation had been running right under my nose, using my frequent absences as cover. I didn't know I repeated more weekly this time. "Your sister claims this was your operation, that you designed the wall cavities, scheduled the deliveries during your supposed business trips, and used her as a front." That's absurd, I felt. A surge of anger break through my shock. Sarah's lying to save herself. "Maybe." Martinez didn't sound convinced. "But here's what we know for certain. The modifications to those walls were professionally done, not amateur work. The cavities were precisely sized and reinforced. Someone with construction knowledge designed them. Not me," I insisted. "The operation required a secure location, minimal neighbor suspicion, and regular access. Your family home with its established history in the neighborhood was perfect. Your frequent travels provided coverage for activities." He laid out more photos, close-ups of the wall cavities in my bedroom, the hidden compartment under the floorboards, the packages of drugs and stacks of cash. 2 kilograms of cocaine, 47,000 in cash, and a distribution network tied to Marcus Wilson, a mid-level dealer we've been tracking for months. Martinez's eyes never left my face. "That's serious time, Mr. Lawrence. Federal charges, asset forfeiture including your family home." The mention of losing our parents' house hit me like a physical blow. "I can't lose that house," I said quietly. "It's all we have left of them." Something in Martinez's expression shifted slightly. "Tell me about yesterday," he said. "When you arrived home unexpectedly." I recounted everything: the van, the workers, Sarah's surprise and explanation, the overheard midnight conversation finding the package in the wall. As I spoke, I reached slowly into my pocket. "I found this," I said, placing the small package on the table. "I was going to confront Sarah this morning, but then you arrived." Martinez looked at the package, but didn't touch it. "Why didn't you call the police immediately upon finding this?" "She's my sister," I said simply. "After our parents died, we're all each other has left. I thought I could talk to her, help her get out of whatever mess she was in." He nodded slowly. "Family loyalty is powerful, sometimes destructive." For the next hour, I answered questions about my job, my travel schedule, my knowledge of construction techniques, my relationship with Sarah. I provided names of coworkers who could verify my whereabouts during business trips, clients I'd met with, hotels where I'd stayed. "Your sister is in another room right now," Martinez eventually said. "She's telling quite a different story. Says you masterminded everything but kept your hands clean by being absent during deliveries. Says you threatened to blame her if anything went wrong. The betrayal stung worse than the handcuffs had." "She's lying," I said flatly. "Check my bank accounts. Check my phone records. You won't find connections to drug dealers or unexplained deposits." "We're doing that," Martinez assured me. "Financial forensics takes time." "What about Marcus Wilson? Have you arrested him?" "We're pursuing all leads." The non-answer told me They hadn't caught him yet. A knock at the door interrupted us. Officer Thompson entered and whispered something to Martinez, who nodded and stood up. "Wait here," he instructed, though where he thought I might go in a locked interrogation room, I wasn't sure. Left alone, I tried to process how thoroughly my life had imploded in less than 24 hours. My career might be over. What construction firm would hire a manager with drug charges? Our family home could be seized by the government. My sister, the person I'd promised to protect, had tried to frame me for her crimes. When Martinez returned 30 minutes later, his demeanor had subtly changed. "Your company has confirmed your whereabouts during the dates in question," he said. "Hotel keycard logs, client meeting records, gas receipts, all placing you out of Seattle when the deliveries occurred." Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. "That doesn't completely clear you," he continued. "You could have coordinated remotely, but it does contradict your sister's timeline." "What did Sarah say when you confronted her with that?" "She modified her story. Now claims you set everything up but left her to handle the day-to-day operations. Says this: Marcus's threatened her if she didn't cooperate. So she was throwing this Marcus under the bus, too. Have you verified Marcus Wilson exists?" "We know who he is," Martinez confirmed. "Mid-level dealer, operates primarily in the North Seattle area. Been on our radar for about a year." "Then you know I'm not him." "No one suggested you were. The question is your level of involvement in his operation." The interrogation continued for another hour. My phone records showed no contact with known dealers. My bank accounts revealed no unexplained deposits, just my regular salary and the modest inheritance from my parents, most of which had gone to paying off the remainder of their mortgage. Finally, the door opened again, and a woman in a sharp charcoal suit entered. "This interview is over," she announced. "I'm Jennifer Takahashi, Mr. Lawrence's attorney." "I didn't call an attorney," I said, confused. "Your company did," she explained briefly. "Westlake Builders has retained me on your behalf." She turned to Martinez. "Unless you're formally charging my client, he's leaving with me now." Martinez gathered his photos unhurriedly. "We're not charging him at this time. But don't leave town, Mr. Lawrence. This investigation is ongoing." Jennifer efficiently gathered me and my few possessions, leading me through the station to the processing desk, where I signed for my wallet, keys, and phone. "What about Sarah?" I asked, as we prepared to leave. "Your sister, Jennifer said carefully, is still being processed. She's made several contradictory statements, but ultimately admitted to allowing Marcus Wilson to use your home as a storage location in exchange for money. She's being charged with possession with intent to distribute." The weight of it all suddenly hit me, and I leaned against the wall for support. "Can I see her?" Jennifer checked her watch. "They're transferring her to King County Jail within the hour. Better to set up a proper visit tomorrow." As we stepped outside the precinct, the spring sunshine felt surreal after hours in the windowless interrogation room. I was free, at least temporarily, but the nightmare was far from over. "What happens now?" I asked Jennifer. "Now," she said, guiding me toward her car, "we prepare your defense. And hope your sister doesn't dig herself or you into a deeper hole." The yellow crime scene tape wrapped around our front porch posts fluttered in the breeze, an unsubtle announcement to the entire neighborhood that something had gone terribly wrong in the Lawrence family home. I stood on the sidewalk 2 days after the arrest, Jennifer Takahashi beside me, as we waited for the police department's evidence team to finish their final sweep. "Once they remove the tape, you can go back in," she explained. "But be prepared, they've likely left a mess." "I can't stay there anyway," I said. "Not right now." I'd spent the past 48 hours in a downtown hotel paid for by Westlake Builders. My boss, Alan Sherman, had been surprisingly supportive after his initial shock. "The company stands behind you, Greg," he'd said during our brief meeting the previous day. "We know your character. Just keep us updated on the legal situation." What he didn't say, but we both understood, was that this support had limits. If charges were formally filed, if this became a public relations issue, Westlake would distance themselves quickly. Detective Martinez approached from the house, nodding to us as he removed his latex gloves. "We're wrapping up, Mr. Lawrence. You can return to your property within the hour." "Any more surprises I should know about?" I asked. "No additional contraband was found," he confirmed. But we've thoroughly documented the modifications to the walls and floors. Don't attempt any repairs or renovations without notifying our department first. What about my sister? Is she still in jail? Martinez's expression remained professional. Miss Lawrence had her arraignment this morning. Bail was set at $100,000, an amount she couldn't possibly afford, an amount I wasn't sure I wanted to pay given her betrayal. She provided substantial information about Marcus Wilson's operation, Martinez continued. The district attorney is considering a cooperation agreement in exchange for reduced charges. She's turning state's evidence, Jennifer translated for me. Marcus Wilson was arrested last night during an arranged buy, Martinez added. Your sister's information was helpful in making that happen. At least Sarah had done one thing right, helping remove a drug dealer from the streets. But it didn't erase her actions or her attempt to frame me. Once the police departed and the crime scene tape came down, Jennifer and I entered the house. The detective hadn't exaggerated about the mess. Drawers had been emptied onto floors, furniture moved, pictures removed from walls, even air vents unscrewed and left hanging. My bedroom was the worst: sections of drywall, completely removed floorboards, pried up insulation pulled from cavities. It's going to take weeks to repair, I said, surveying the damage. Document everything, Jennifer advised. Take photos. Keep receipts for repairs. If you're cleared completely, you might be able to file for compensation. That if hung heavy in the air between us. After Jennifer left, I wandered through the empty house, seeing it through new eyes. The home that had represented security and family now felt tainted. In the kitchen, I found Sarah's coffee mug in the sink, a smear of her pink lipstick on the rim, such a normal, everyday object now connected to an unrecognizable version of my sister. The next morning, I visited Sarah at the King County Correctional Facility. The visiting area was a sterile room with bolted-down metal tables and plastic chairs. Sarah entered wearing an orange jumpsuit, her normally styled hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face devoid of makeup. She looked simultaneously younger and older than her 28 years. You came, she said, genuine surprise in her voice as she sat across from me. I almost didn't, I admitted. Silence stretched between us, weighted with betrayal and unasked questions. Why, I finally managed. Just one word, but it contained multitudes. Sarah's eyes dropped to the table. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How is it supposed to happen? You turn our family home into a drug warehouse and then, what? Live happily ever after with your dealer boyfriend. Marcus wasn't just a dealer, she defended weakly. He has bigger plans. Investments. Oh, I'm sure, I scoffed. All drug dealers say that. You don't understand how bad things got after my divorce, she continued. Tyler left me with nothing, Greg. My design work barely covered rent. When Mom and Dad died and you offered to let me move home, I was desperate. So you decided to repay me by turning our house into a trap house. I met Marcus at a bar. He was charming, seemed successful. When I learned what he really did, it was too late. I was already involved. You could have come to me, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I would have helped you. With what another lecture about responsibility, I needed money, not advice. So you risked our family home. Everything Mom and Dad worked for. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. I never thought we'd get caught. Marcus had been doing this for years. And you tried to blame me. The anger I'd been suppressing finally erupted. You told the police I masterminded everything. Her face crumpled. I panicked. I was scared, Greg. Prison terrifies me. And you thought I'd be better equipped to handle it. That I deserved it more than you. No, I wasn't thinking clearly. I studied my sister, this person I'd grown up with, shared secrets with, promised our parents I'd protect. She seemed simultaneously familiar and a complete stranger. The police said you helped them catch Marcus, I said. She nodded, wiping tears with her sleeve. They offered me a deal. If I testified against him, helped them understand his operation, they'd reduce my charges. How reduced? Possibly 3 years instead of 10. Maybe parole after 18 months with good behavior. The reality of our new normal hit me. My sister would go to prison. Our family had imploded. The home that should have been our sanctuary was now evidence in a drug trafficking case. "What about the house?" Sarah asked quietly. "What about it? It's a crime scene. Half my bedroom is missing. I'm staying at a hotel because I can't bear to sleep there. Are they going to take it? Asset forfeiture?" Of course she'd be worried about that. "Jennifer says there's a good chance we can keep it since I've been cleared of involvement. But honestly, Sarah, I don't know if I want to keep it anymore. Every corner of that house now reminds me of your betrayal." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Greg. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I was desperate and stupid and scared. I wanted to stay angry. Needed to even. But beneath my fury was the undeniable fact that this was still my little sister, the same girl who'd crawled into my bed during thunderstorms as a child, who'd cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, who'd stood beside me at our parents' funeral clutching my hand like a lifeline. "Your lawyer says the preliminary hearing is next month," I said, shifting topics. "I'll be there." Hope flickered across her face. "You will." "I'm not abandoning you, Sarah. I'm furious with you. I don't trust you. But I'm not abandoning you." When our visiting time ended, I watched guards escort her back to the holding area. Walking out of the jail into sunshine felt wrong somehow, a freedom I was grateful for, but that highlighted the consequences my sister now faced. Over the next weeks, I slowly began putting our lives back together. I returned to work grateful for projects that required travel, taking me away from Seattle and the whispers that followed me there. I hired contractors to repair the damage to the house, supervising the work personally to ensure no unwanted modifications were included. Neighbors' attitudes ranged from awkward sympathy to obvious avoidance. The Johnsons, bless them, brought over a casserole like someone had died. In a way, something had our family's reputation, our sense of security, my blind trust in my sister. Through Jennifer, I arranged for Sarah to have a decent defense attorney. Not to help her escape consequences she needed to face those, but to ensure the punishment fit her actual crime, not the exaggerated version the prosecution might paint. As I sorted through Sarah's belongings one evening, boxing up what she'd need in prison versus what could be stored, I found a framed photo she kept on her nightstand. Sarah and me at her college graduation, arms around each other, both smiling broadly. Our parents had taken the picture, their shadows just visible at the edge of the frame. I sat on her bed holding that frozen moment from a simpler time, and finally allowed myself to cry for everything we'd lost. 6 months passed with the steady rhythm that time insists upon even when lives are in chaos. Seasons changed, spring warmth giving way to Seattle's glorious summer, then the first hints of fall coloring the trees in our neighborhood. The world continued turning despite the Lawrence family drama. Sarah had been sentenced to 3 years at the Washington Corrections Center for Women in Gig Harbor, with possibility of parole after 18 months. Her cooperation against Marcus Wilson, who received a 12-year sentence, had indeed earned her leniency from the judge. My initial anger had gradually transformed into something more complex: disappointment, mixed with compassion, boundary setting tempered with forgiveness. I drove the 80 minutes to Gig Harbor every other Sunday for visiting hours, watching my sister slowly change in that environment. "The counseling program here is actually good," she told me during today's visit, her face looking healthier than it had in months. "I'm working through a lot of stuff, not just the drug charges, but my divorce, losing mom and dad, all of it." "That's good," I said, meaning it. "You seem more present." "Clear-headed," she agreed. "No alcohol, no drugs, no toxic relationships. Forces you to actually deal with your emotions instead of numbing them." The irony wasn't lost on either of us that prison had provided the structure and support Sarah needed to heal. Sometimes rock bottom has a foundation you can rebuild upon. Our family home had been fully repaired. The walls rebuilt, floors, replaced, fresh paint, covering any reminder of its brief history as a stash house. After much soul-searching, I decided not to sell it. The house itself hadn't betrayed us. It had been a silent witness to human failings. It deserved a second chance, too. My professional life had eventually stabilized. After a temporary reassignment to office-based projects, Westlake had gradually returned me to field management. Alan had taken me aside after the first successful completion. "You've handled this whole situation with remarkable professionalism, Greg," he'd said. The company appreciates that. Translation: thank you for not becoming a liability. The neighborhood had largely moved on to newer gossip. The Johnsons still checked on me regularly, bringing occasional baked goods with the transparent excuse of making too much. The Patel's children had resumed cutting across our lawn as a shortcut to the park, a small but meaningful sign that we weren't being treated as pariahs anymore. Not everything had healed so neatly. I'd developed a heightened awareness of security that bordered on paranoia, installing cameras, changing locks, questioning repairmen's credentials. I started seeing a therapist to work through trust issues that had seeped into every relationship in my life. Sarah and I had established new boundaries for when she would eventually be released. She wouldn't be moving back into the family home. A halfway house would provide the transition she needed. I would support her emotionally and help her find legitimate work, but financial support would come with verification and transparency. "I'm thinking about getting certified in graphic design while I'm in here," Sarah said during our visit. "They have some basic courses, not great computers, but enough to learn fundamentals." "That's a good idea," I encouraged. "Your talent was never the issue. It was the business side you struggled with. And the not getting involved with drug dealers side," she added with a sad smile. "Pretty big struggle there." After visiting hours ended, I drove to Evergreen Cemetery where our parents were buried. It had become a ritual after my prison visits, updating them in my mind about Sarah's progress, seeking guidance they could no longer provide directly. Standing before their shared headstone, I reflected on what they would make of everything that had happened. "I kept my promise," I said, aloud to their marker. "Not perfectly, but I didn't abandon her. I'm still looking out for Sarah, just in ways I never imagined I'd need to." The past 6 months had taught me lessons I never wanted to learn, but now couldn't unlearn. That blind trust, even in family, can be dangerous. That love doesn't require naivety. That helping sometimes means setting hard boundaries. That forgiveness doesn't erase consequences, but can walk alongside them. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. The final paperwork officially clearing me of all potential charges had been filed. The case against me was formally closed, a chapter ending if not the entire story. Driving home, I noticed new for sale signs in the neighborhood, new families moving in just as others moved out. Life continuing its cycles of renewal and change. Our family had been broken but was slowly reforming into something different. Not what our parents had envisioned for us, certainly, but something that might eventually be whole in its own way. The future remained uncertain. Sarah would need to rebuild her life after prison, a challenge in a society that rarely offers second chances to former inmates. I would need to continue balancing support with self-protection, compassion with caution. As I turned onto our street, the setting sun cast long shadows across the repaired and repainted porch of our family home. From the outside, no one would ever know what had happened within those walls. But I knew. Sarah knew. And we were both changed by that knowledge. Love doesn't require blindness. Sometimes the truest form of love is seeing clearly and choosing to stay anyway, but with your eyes wide open. Has your trust ever been betrayed by someone close to you? How did you handle forgiveness while still protecting yourself? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences about family betrayal and the complicated path to healing. Thank you for listening to my journey. May your own paths forward be marked with wisdom and peace.